Hi, welcome to Signal Tower. Today I am joined by Mikael Cho, who is the founder of Ooomf, which is an online marketplace that connects awesome projects with world-class designers and developers. Mikael, welcome to the show today.
Thanks, Sam. Really happy that you invited me on the call.
Well, good. I guess, kind of let's begin the show. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, so I'm originally from the US, actually. So our company, Ooomf, is based in Montreal, Canada, currently. I'm from Wisconsin. I graduated from university there. This 5 years ago, I met a girl. She was from Montreal. That's what brought me up to Canada. And pretty much right away, in Quebec, you either have to speak French in order to get a job, or you could start a company. So I chose the starting a company path, and I got really into digital marketing. This was in about 2008 when Twitter was really taking off. I worked at a startup and really learned how to market basically with no budget. And I did that for a long time. Went and worked for a digital agency after that, heavily focused on design, and I got really into product. Ended up meeting some extremely talented designers, developers, and that's where I started noticing sort of some issues in the space, especially in the freelance space. So I became an independent designer, teamed up with an independent developer, and that's when we started Ooomf. So this was about a year and a half ago.
And so, as I kind of mentioned earlier, Ooomf is kind of a marketplace where people that have ideas about how to build projects can find designers and developers. I guess you guys also have a few side projects that you've put together with Ooomf.
Yep.
Will you tell us a little bit about those side projects and I guess how they've worked out for you guys?
Yeah, so we've done in the last 3 years, three years. In the last year, we've done three projects that have been done really well. So the first one was actually in January, and it was called Launch This Year. So it's launchthisyear.com. And we realized that people were asking sort of a lot of questions about how to go about releasing an app. How do you market it? How do you price it? What's the process? So we basically we scoured the web, found all the best links for everything, and filtered everything into 9 skills. So you can go all the way from the idea to launch, and we would send one of these skills out every single week. So on January 1st, we released this campaign. It was picked up by Lifehacker and other major media outlets. It ended up crashing our site on that day, and we had over 20,000 subscribers in 2 days.
That is incredible.
So, and that was huge, and that really sort of kickstarted how we sort of rethink marketing. Nothing we do, we try not even to use the term marketing. Almost, it's all about, for us, it's about solving problems.
Right.
So rarely do we send a marketing email. All of our titles in our emails are geared towards problems that we solve in this space. So I used to be an independent designer. There's lots of little micro problems that are actually somewhat big. And when you solve them in a simple way, I think, that can become marketing. And it doesn't need to, be hammering your marketing message down people's throats all the time. So that was the first one we did that was very successful. And then we followed that up with Unsplash, which is a photo blog. We do 10 high-res, do whatever you want. So they're Creative Commons 0. You can do anything you want with these photos. Super high-res, beautiful, and we curate them. So there's 10 new photos every 10 days, and it's fully run by the community now. That site currently has over 600,000 downloads of photos in the last 6 months. So this has been huge, and it's something we didn't really expect. We actually started with a photo shoot for our website, and we realized, this was expensive for us. We have some extra photos. This is probably really useful for other designers, other developers, anybody who's creating a website. Let's put them up and give them away for free. And since then, it's really just become something magical, and the community around it is amazing. So, very, very proud of that one. And we continue. It's still rolling now. The third one that we did was very recent. This was in September, so last month. It's called howmuchtomakaanapp.com. So we've been experimenting a lot with how to estimate projects, and it's super challenging. Sometimes when you set out to make a mobile app and you're working with a client, estimating a project can almost take like 30% of the whole project. You're spending all this time sort of going back and forth. How much should this cost? How many features? What do I need to include? So we took all of the data from past projects we've seen and built it into this very simple to use sort of 5 clicks, and we give you an estimate based on features. If you're building for iPhone, Android, tablet, and you just sort of click through it, it works on every device. And the first day we had over 50,000 uniques on that alone. It's now the 4th result when you search how much does an app cost on Google. So it's been another good one. And I think it is because we look at these products as something that we would have used.
Right.
So when I was an independent designer, what would I want and how would I want to use it? So that's how we view a lot of these things. So I think that intuition from our past experience has been huge in sort of coming up with these.
And I think they've been fantastic at, that's how I found you guys, through Unsplash. Some guy at the office, we were working on kind of a side project. It was a slow day. We were working on a side project, and he was using photos from Unsplash, and I was asking him, if that was something that he took, or where did he find those? He was like, well, there's this awesome site that has all of this great photography. I was like, oh, this is cool. They'll give you 10 photos each week. Take my email. And I clicked through, saw Ooomf. I was like, well, this is a pretty clever kind of marketing way to get people to your site. And I could still use Unsplash on side projects. I actually use on my desktop right now. I've got Unsplash photo as my background, so I think it's great. But then on Designer News, I saw that you guys had posted I guess the last one that you guys worked on that kind of explains how much it costs to build your application. Mm-hmm. And went through. I was like, this is really cool. Someone really spent a lot of time and thought, putting this little project together. And sure enough, it was you guys again. And that's actually, I think, when I reached out to you to set up this interview, because I think it's been incredibly impressive. And those numbers are I knew they'd be big, but those numbers are pretty huge. I'm curious with these kind of side projects, how, you say numbers like that, but how does something like that start? How do you get that off the ground?
So usually we'll write something about it and the reasons why we built it. And we'll post, we actually, how much to make an app, we never posted anywhere. We sent out a little thing to some of our members on Ooomf. And right. They ended up posting it on Designer News, and then it was on Reddit. It was on Hacker News as well. So that usually fuels it at the beginning. And if it's well done, it usually continues to fuel itself. So that has been a big driver. That's a good measure for us too, if we're doing something good, if it takes off initially on one of those sites. And sometimes there's feedback there, and it's really great actually, because we're looking to improve these things. These are things that we don't want just to sit there. We know that we can improve them. So how much to make an app, we have so many things that we're going to be adding into that, and it's really exciting. So it just makes it much more transparent. And if you were working with a single mobile developer or designer, it can help them a lot, when they're estimating a project. And we actually reached out to our members to have them review it and tweak it. So we were working on that for a few months.
That's interesting. Could you by any chance share any of those features or tweaks that you guys are making?
So yeah, we'll be pulling in styles. So a lot of the issues is, somebody wants a flat design or they want this design. And it really just helps if you were working with a designer and you knew, as a designer, you knew that a client wants all these features, this type of style that they're looking for, here's the budget, and the client understands that that's the budget for quality, that's really what we're after. So whatever we can do to make it more transparent, and the challenges in this space of how to, you have to communicate how much quality design and development costs.
Right.
And it's very hard when it's an industry that's foreign to someone. And this is the case in a lot of service industries. How much should this cost? What does quality cost? So we're trying to put a beat on that.
Right. Well, so it definitely sounds like you guys have had some successes, but I'm curious, what's the hardest lesson you've had to learn?
So like, as some of those, sometimes we like to ship really fast. So like how much to make an app, we shipped it really fast. And initially we had an issue in our sort of mechanism for determining a price. Like it was like 3 times too low. So when we shipped it initially, we didn't actually think it wasn't going to get picked up. We were just sort of testing it. And then it just took off. And, some people were saying, this is a joke, it's too low. And I completely understand, because it was. So immediately we fixed it. But, it's interesting because you do want to launch very, very fast all the time. That's how we think. And now sort of when people know that these are your past projects and you're going to do another one, we just need to be a little more careful. We still want to launch fast, but, more cognizant of that.
Right. Well, so I guess let's go back and talk a little bit more about Ooomf. What is you guys have worked on a lot of cool projects. I guess what is the long-term goal for Ooomf? What's the vision?
Yeah, so the big thing that we're looking to do is give that power of trust and being able to work with anyone, anywhere on the planet so much easier. So, there's sites that exist now, there's platforms that exist now that have sort of ushered in the era for online work. But, now that sort of everyone is online, there's more and more people offering services. People are getting more comfortable with doing work online. It's easier than ever before. We want to be the future of that. And we see the future of that as it's not just about price. It's about the quality of the product that is delivered. It's about people being proud of the result. And I've seen it too many times, in my career, sort of as a professional on the web, where sometimes something gets released at the end, and people are like, "Yeah, it's okay. We got it done." And we want this to be different. We want this to be, I'm so happy. Like, I am proud. And every project that is done on Ooomf, our talent is putting it in their portfolios, because we've built so many things in the system that make it simple to run a project through, make sure everyone is happy, the client's happy with the results, the talent, it's a respectable project all the time, high quality budgets and scopes. So any measure that we can do to make that happen, that is where we're going.
Cool. Well, before we started the interview, we were talking a little bit about psychology and your interest in it. I'm wondering, how have you used psychology to kind of guide what you're doing? What role does psychology play at Ooomf?
Yeah, so I went to the University of Wisconsin. I majored in psychology and pre-medicine there. I used to conduct fMRI, so we could watch people's brains and do studies. So that was really interesting. We actually had a study with Tibetan monks at our research facility. So we would have the Dalai Lama would come every year, and you would get to see his brain while he's meditating. So there's some insane stuff that we got to see.
Wow.
But what really
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. What really interested me was seeing like social psychology and the way people act in certain situations, and how it's often the opposite of what you would expect. So there's really interesting studies all down that route. And when you get into web and mobile and building a company, and especially like building a web company from scratch, a startup, you're making assumptions at 1,000 miles an hour, and you're basically guessing on tons of hypotheses all the time. It's very similar to a psychological study. You have hypotheses and you have participants, and you're trying to prove something. And that's very similar to a startup. It's almost identical. So there's so much crossover, like email campaigns. When I see statistics in our MailChimp newsletter, I start seeing psychology. It's like, here's the open rate from the last one, here's things that could be tweaked, all these tests. And it's sort of like a psychologist's dream almost.
That's interesting. And, I'm thinking about that in your newsletter. You guys actually have kind of two audiences that you're trying to attract. One audience is obviously you want quality designers and developers and basically kind of like web and app creatives. And on the other hand, you guys are looking for, people that need these people. So I'm curious how you manage catering to each audience differently, or do you? How does that work?
Yeah, so just in a marketing sense, and I'll give you an example with our email campaigns, because that's a lot of what we do. Everything is like hyper segmented. So we have a very large email subscriber list, but we break it down and we only send people, what we think is the most relevant thing for them. So if we're writing on this topic that is really only useful for somebody who might post a project on it, we will only send it to them. We don't send it to the talent side. So we are very cognizant of, not annoying people. We want people to feel like we care about them and their inbox.
Right. I'm curious, like how many segments you guys have, and how do you go about determining, who gets what specific email? What, mechanisms? I guess obviously sometimes you have to make a guess, but kind of what mechanisms do you guys have in place for that?
Yeah, so we probably have about 6 different subscriber lists, and each of those 6 is segmented, based on open rates and things that they clicked before. So we really break things down. Yeah, so the main top 2 segments there's 3 actually. We have newsletter subscribers, so we do a lot of writing and content that's geared usually towards both sides actually. Then we have talent, which is actually segmented by design, development, and then further segmented by mobile and web. And then we have customers, so people who post projects, people who sort of subscribe to updates, things like that. So those are the main 3 segments, and then they're all sort of broken down further from there.
Gotcha. Tell me a little bit about the team at Ooomf.
Yeah, so we've been doing a lot of this with the team of 4. So we have 2 mainly focused on product, 2 are on biz dev and marketing, and it allows us to move very fast. So, one of the benefits of being small is moving fast, and if you don't move fast, then essentially you lose the core benefit of being a small team. So that's always been something that we strive to do, is move as fast as we can, and I think that's why we've been able to do a lot in the last 6 months, and we're really excited, where we're going in the future. This is the exact team that I would want to have in order to do what we're doing.
Good. I guess as far as being an entrepreneur goes, I'm sure you've learned a ton of lessons. What are, for young entrepreneurs or people out there watching, what advice would you give them?
I think there's sort of 2 really big things. The first one is, if you're going to start something, you better care so much about the problem that you're solving. Because when you're working 12, 15 hours, you're dealing with every customer issue yourself, you're coding, you're designing, you're marketing, you're basically answering tons of emails sometimes. Um, you need to be all about that problem that you're trying to solve. Because if you don't care, you'll give up. And that's the biggest thing. I think it's just, there's a lot of ways that you can solve problems. But from the big thing that I've learned is definitely solve a problem that is a problem for you, because you'll resonate instantly with it, and you'll have ideas on how to solve it. It's a much easier thing. And the second piece is, a lot of people say this too. It's the people, and I can give very concrete examples of how important it is. You can be set back by months, and even like companies will fall apart. I've seen it happen just by hiring the wrong person who has like something, if something sort of you don't feel is, even if it's something very small about someone that you've hired, that thing can grow, and over time it just can really infect the team. And sometimes it's so hard, because there's so many facets of a person. They have their personality, how they deal with people, what they do in the company. So it's very, very challenging, and it needs to fit with your culture specifically. So we take a ton of measures when hiring people. We don't hire people that often. When we do hire them, they come in for a few weeks and work with us before we do sort of a full-time offer. And that's simply because we know that that's sort of the time frame to really see and get to know the person. We do that test of, if your partner was in the office on Sunday and you were working at home and you knew that they were in the office, would you go to the office? Do you want to be around your team that much? So I think that's a good measure. And if you smell some issue early on, it's much better to deal with it early, especially if it's a team issue, than sort of let it drag on.
Definitely. All right, well, I think we're reaching the end of the interview here. Is there any other last comments or advice you'd like to give?
No, I think those last two bits are super important.
Definitely.
And if you care about your problem, it's also something that will drive you forward. So it's something that will, you're not going to know how to do everything. Like, I wrote my first blog post, I think it was a year ago. And now we write regularly on our blog, and it's one of the biggest drivers of growth for our company. And it's because I cared about our company and I cared about what we were solving. And you learn to do these things because you care about what can happen from that. So if you don't care, you're not going to maybe take those lengths and really do the hard stuff, because you're going to get to the parts where it gets really hard and you'll stop. But if you care about your idea, you really are passionate about what you're doing, you will go through the hard spots, you'll make it through on the other side, and then you're going to do it again because it worked. And that's sort of probably the biggest thing that I've learned.
All right. What a great end to an interview. Mikael, where can people follow you? How can they give you money? How does that work?
So I'm in Canada. It might be hard to give me money, but you can follow. You could use Square Cash, I guess. That's cool. I heard that. But anyway, Twitter is my name, first and last, all one word, Mikael Cho, and Ooomf.com is the site. It's OOMF.com.
Perfect. Mikael, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Sam.